Hi guys, it's Jamie here from Jamie Brewster's Musical Heroes, and I'm absolutely honoured to have the great Probyn Gregory with us today. Hello, Probyn, how are you?
I'm fine. How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. I understand you're a bit jet lagged after sort of Christmas flights and things like that.
Yes, I am. I was visiting my wife's family in Germany, and it's been a while actually since I've been out of the country on a plane. I'm trying to think of the last time we did that with Brian Wilson. It might have been 2021 or earlier,
Really?
perhaps.
Wow. Okay. How do you and how just going on to that, how do you manage to acclimatize with all the traveling, the flights and the buses and all of that stuff?
Well, normally when you're on a bus, you're not going that far afield. A plane in 4 hours can go halfway across the United States. When you
Okay.
go on a bus for 4 hours, you're barely able to get into the next time zone, if you know
Right.
what I mean. So generally, when I'm on the bus, there's not too much of a difference between uh, one day and another. Even if I drive 8 hours, it's likely that I'm in one or maybe two time zones away, not the nine time zones that I was away at Christmas time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you've got to be quite strong for some of it, I think. And the airports and the checks and the getting there 3 hours early or something ridiculous.
Sure.
You've got to be strong.
And we're not in control. Whereas when we're on the
Yeah.
tour bus,
Yeah.
it's the manager and the artist are
Yeah.
calling the shots, and it's up to the tour bus driver. The rest of us are in our bunks with our arms up, reading books and playing games and you
Wow.
know uh,
Okay.
whatnot. There's a refrigerator. There's a little bathroom. We're
Okay.
all set.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So, Probyn, I wonder if you, for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners that maybe aren't that familiar with you, though I'm sure, well, most of my channel followers will be because of your connection with Brian and the Beach Boys, of course. But could you take us back a little bit to your musical start, really, where you started with music in your life?
Sure. Well, my parents were interested in music, although they weren't that musical themselves. They played recorders, the little,
Mhm.
and but they were into listening to rock music. My
Okay.
mother was really a beatnik, listening to Miles Davis and jazz stuff in the late 50s.
Okay.
And my father was pretty hip too when we were living in. My father was a botany professor.
Okay.
So we spent a couple of years, like around the summer of love, 1967.
Yeah.
We were living in Palo Alto, California when he was at Stanford. And so that was, I mean, the San Francisco Bay Area around 1967 was culturally one of the high points in on the globe at that time.
Yeah.
And I was part of it, even though I was only 10 years old, but I had long hair and I wore a little surfer's cross around my
Did
neck.
you? Oh,
And
incredible.
I
Wonderful.
wished to be 10 years older than I really was because I could see that, my parents were playing Jefferson Airplane, the
Mm.
group Love Forever Changes,
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix at Monterey. I mean, all these records were coming through the house and I was soaking it all up. Although what really began my musical odyssey was the top 40 radio.
Okay.
I had a little a radio about the size of a deck of cards that I would hold up to my ear constantly. And I believe it was 1965 when I was 8. Um, California Girls came on the
Mm.
air, and it changed my life. I mean, that
Yeah.
I would have to stop walking and just
Yeah.
listen to that guitar intro, the whole
Mm.
intro with the horns coming in and everything. It was magical. It really it transported me to a different place.
Yeah.
And thereafter, the radio became very important to me. And it, unless I was in school, that thing was attached to my ear, or I was listening to the music that my parents were playing around the house on the record player.
Right. So you're immersed in music from a pretty early age, and the little transistor radios I remember well too. And I
Mhm.
was influenced by my brother a lot because we're a Beatle. Well, he was a Beatles nut really, and UK bands for him really. But when I first heard the Beach Boys, Best of the Beach Boys Volume One, slightly different from the the US version, I just wore it out. I thought, what is this? It was
I bet.
in sort of Midlands, UK, in the middle of miles from the coast, right in the middle. And when I heard this stuff, it just made me feel so great inside.
Yes.
And the Beatles, I loved them, but it just never, the Beatles, it's still, you know, of course they're magical and brilliant, but I'm afraid Brian and his guys did it for me. They
Well,
really did.
the Beatles were important to me also. There was whatever year that was, maybe 1964. If I Fell,
FFL, yeah,
that was my song of the year. I don't
beautiful.
can't even remember if my parents had the record or some of my friends had it, but
Yeah.
it would go through my mind constantly, which started this thing that plagues me to this day, which is having earworms that you cannot get rid of. The chorus of a song will be on
Yeah.
constant repeat for hours at a job while I'm working away on the computer. If I
Yes.
fell in love with you,
Yeah, what a
there it
melody.
is again.
Yeah. Oh, they were masters of melody, those two. And
Oh, yes.
yeah, and we could talk a lot about that. But so going back to your sort of the 8 years old and California girls, what happened after that then? Where did you sort of,
Well, what happened was that because I was listening to the radio so much, I, of course, was picking out the different instruments, and it's like, oh, what's that sound there on Ruby
okay,
Tuesday? Oh, that's Brian Jones playing a recorder, and my parents have a recorder, but it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound like the Rolling Stones. Or I would hear the trumpets on Forever Changes by Arthur Lee and Love.
yeah,
And then I was the school that I was going to uh, gave out band instruments. You could pick and choose one. They had a collection of, I believe, school-owned instruments, and I
mm,
chose the trumpet mainly
okay,
because I was hearing songs like "Kind of a Drag" by the Buckinghams,
oh yeah,
or
mhm,
"Alone Again" or by Love, with that
okay,
nice sort of Spanish-sounding trumpet
mm,
solo. Um, anyway, it never occurred to me that anyone can ever make money off these playing music, but it was something to do and something to aspire to. So I began playing trumpet. Unfortunately, there was not an orchestra. I was in the fourth grade in Palo Alto, just
mhm,
at home playing, Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, the Bach
okay,
tune,
mm,
and getting the fingerings down and trying to get all the things that happen when you're a trumpet player. You have to have, lip muscles, and
big
the air
time.
from your lungs has to be
Mm,
right and everything has to be lined up. And
mm,
I guess I had lessons then. I also started taking guitar lessons when I was about 10.
okay,
However, my guitar teacher wanted me to do scales, which I hated,
yeah,
and also to play folk songs that I didn't know and didn't care about. So eventually, after about a year's time, I said, I'd rather play baseball with my friends. I'm going to stop playing the guitar, which I did until about age 14 when I
okay,
picked it up again, when it was the time of James Taylor and Carole King and Neil Young and
oh,
all these sort of
super, yeah,
singer-songwriter types.
yeah,
That
yeah,
sort of hooked me back. But I'm jumping ahead now. I
that's okay,
don't mean to get to.
that's all
So
right.
anyway, I played trumpet, and then when I moved, our family moved because my father had gotten a job offer in New Hampshire, which is where we'd been going every summer anyway. My family had a, a sort of I'll call it a summer place. And eventually my grandparents built a house just down the road from that summer place. Um,
Mm,
and so we moved there to rural New Hampshire, the middle of the woods, not, a couple hours from Boston, Massachusetts.
no,
And I began playing in the little, junior high orchestras or
right,
bands, concert bands. They guess they called
excellent,
them.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
there was a jazz band that I was into on trumpet.
okay,
Um, and at some point and when I got to high school, uh, the conductor said, "We really need a French horn player. We have a surplus of trumpet players. Does any trumpet player want to have play French horn? It's the same fingering. It's just, it's a brass instrument. You'll be first chair. You'll be the head of the whole thing." And I said, "I'll try that."
great.
So they got me a French horn, and I began playing that. And it was harder than the trumpet, but it was fun and it was a good sound. Um, Anyway, then I went to this. I'm sort of jumping. Is it all right if I just ramble on,
Jump
or do you
around
have a
wherever you
particular
like.
question?
It's fine.
Um, when I was in between junior high and which is like eighth grade, what would the age would that be? 13 or so,
Yeah, probably,
um,
wouldn't it? Yeah.
and 14. I went to a music camp. My grandparents had allowed us Gregory children to pick the camp of our choice, and they would allow us. They would pay for and some, my sister went to a dance camp, and my other sister went to an art camp, and I went to music camp, as did my younger brother Rohan.
Mm,
Have to stop here and say that my younger brother Rohan is the real musician of the family. He teaches violin, has a bunch of students down in the Boston area. He also is very conversant with not only um, flamenco music with all the there's
yeah,
this like finger snapping and things you do with your mouth, and then you're tapping with your feet on the ground. It's very
sure,
complicated. He
sure.
understands all of that stuff. In addition to which, he can play in the Middle Eastern groups that have, songs that are in 13/8, where it's, cha 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 cha. He
Mate,
knows all that stuff. And so when
wow.
Joni Mitchell came through town, uh, needing a little orchestra, and also Page and Plant came from Led
Okay,
Zeppelin, came through
okay.
with some Egyptian musicians in
Oh,
tow,
really?
and they wanted to put in a Middle Eastern group together. They
Okay.
called my brother, and he helped them out and played in the ensemble. Um,
Superb.
he's also the reason I mention him is because when I first was learning to play the songs I was hearing on the radio, Simon and Garfunkel or the Light My Fire by the Doors, I would sit down
Yeah,
at the piano and work it out slowly,
wonderful.
slowly.
Yeah.
I
And were
showed
you sight reading? Were
no,
you
I was
sight
doing it
reading?
all by ear.
Or
I mean,
by
I
ear?
could
You
read a
sure?
little bit of music from
Okay.
having taken the trumpet lessons, and
Hmm.
that was true for vocal groups, little choirs that I got in. I could read the notes there, but
Good, yeah.
mainly I was just going by what was going on in my ear.
Yeah.
So my brother came over at one point, 3 or 4 years my junior, and one day he said, "Hey, can you show me what you're doing?" And I said, "Sure." So he sat next to me, and I played, whatever it was, Scarborough Fair, some song. I don't even know what it was. The very next week, I came back. He was playing that song and doing thing where you like jazz players do, where you play chords with one hand and then solo with the other hand. He was doing that, and I'm like, how? What? How did that happen? I can't do that. How that was only like 1 week, and you've eclipsed me on the piano.
And the piano, is a little, you've got so many things going on with about 10 fingers, haven't you, as
Oh
well?
yes,
So,
I,
you
I
know,
feel that way about the drums. I cannot play the drums where you have four things going at one
yeah,
time. Or
sure.
as you say on the piano, there's like if you're looking at the music, if you're like a choral,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
playing with the choir and they have the soprano,
Hmm.
alto, tenor, and bass.
Thanks, yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
there's four different lines, some of them crossing each other.
I
And you're
know.
at the piano trying to make that work.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
understand how people can do that.
no, it's hard enough for me to just, I mean, I sing in a bit of a choir here. I have to sing in Spanish and listen to the instructions in Spanish, read the words, and follow the music. So it's quite challenging. That I must admit, quite
Uh-huh.
challenging. But yeah, and so right. So where did that lead you to then, really, Probyn? Where, what? Obviously your brother was helped. Did he help you actually? Your brother, do you think, or
Not really. I mean, we
no?
liked the same kind of music, which was at the time in the early 70s. Not only we were both addicted to the top 40 radio, where you hear
Yeah,
groups
yeah,
like Chicago, and
yeah.
my brother Rohan played saxophone also, and I
Okay.
played trumpet. So we were always listening to what we
Oh,
call horn
great.
bands,
Oh, yeah, and
like Blood,
Chicago,
Sweat, and
fantastic.
Tears,
Yeah.
Chicago, even to a certain extent, Steely Dan had a lot of
Hmm. Yeah,
interesting
yeah, yeah.
brass and wind arrangements.
Hmm.
So, we would listen to things on the radio, and we had a big stereo console upstairs in
Right.
the house that we lived in. And
Lovely.
all of the kids had our favorite records. My sister Caddy was very much into Led Zeppelin,
Okay.
Yes, and Genesis.
Wow.
I was into the Beach Boys, Steely Dan, and Todd Rundgren. Those were
Okay.
sort of my
Yeah,
bigger bands. Of course, everyone liked the Beatles. That goes without saying.
of course. Yeah.
But But it was sort of, it came down that we had six kids in that family and one stereo, and we were also living in one giant, large, 40-foot long bedroom. So it was hard to get away from the stereo. If you didn't want to hear it, you'd have to go out of the house into the woods. And if you had managed to get home early enough, you could wrest control. You could put on your album that
Yeah,
you wanted and play whatever you wanted until, at some point we would have to just trade off, and
yeah, of
someone else would have their half an hour of listening
course.
to whatever music they wanted. So the music was played a lot in the house, and my brothers and sisters had a lot of favorites. So I was in high school and I was playing in the concert band. I was also starting to try to pick apart other songs, like I mentioned that guy Todd Rundgren, who,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, in terms of my musical heroes, probably Neil Young was my first one.
Okay.
Brian Wilson was my second one, and Todd Rundgren was my third one. And then at that point, I sort of stopped playing favorites, and I said, "Look, it's all good. If someone's into a song that I dislike, like um, Mandy by
Okay.
oh, come on, who's that
What's his
by?
name? Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Manilow. Not Manilow. No.
Barry Manilow. Barry Manilow. Thank
Barry
you. How
Manilow.
could
Yeah.
I forget? Since he had done "I Write the Songs" that
I
Bruce
know.
Johnston had
Bruce
written.
Johnston. Yeah.
He he got a Grammy for that one. Anyway, I happen to not like the song Mandy. But who am
Yeah.
I to say that someone else derives great pleasure from it?
Sure.
Great. Hooray.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's great. That's really, really
I don't
super.
want to be the one going around poo-pooing
No,
music that is important to other people.
I poo-poo music a lot these days. I really do because I hear
Oh,
auto-tune
really?
everywhere, and I hear artificial intelligence flipping coming in.
Yeah,
And I go to a little gym in the town and they put gym music on, and I go, yeah, okay, it's gym music, fine. Then you hear bad language as well.
sure.
And most of it's American, actually. And I think, what? I
Yeah,
said, could you turn that off, please? I said, I don't like it. I said, oh, okay, yes, we will.
yeah.
They're very good, the instructors. They'll put something on I like. I mean, we got an Eagles track at the end the other day, so it's sort
That's
of,
good.
yeah, some of the young kids around me saying, "Oh, it's this Jamie. What's his problem?" But yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that I think, "Oh my Lord," all the bands you mentioned. I mean, that is music, isn't it?
Sure. Oh,
Incredible.
absolutely. And well, and everyone has, it's very subjective. Everyone has their own taste,
Yeah,
and
and there's
and
art,
it,
Probyn, as well, isn't it? True art in some of the music. I mean, well, the bands you've mentioned and the artists, it's art.
mhm.
And I listen to the stuff that they throw out on computers and stuff, and I think, no, where are we going? But
Yes, it's a weird time. At least we
mm,
have these box sets of unreleased stuff coming from the Beach Boys and other groups where
don't we? Yeah.
you think you know the output of, or you think you've heard everything that Badfinger ever did,
Oh,
and
okay.
then here comes a demo by Pete Ham from 1967, and it's news.
Yeah.
Nobody's heard it before.
No. I got the Frankie Valli Four Seasons huge box set, and there's quite a lot of interesting stuff in there, really. I love the harmonies. I just love their harmonies, really.
Sure.
But I
Yeah,
prefer
that was a
Brian's.
good group.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And yeah, so going along then. So you were playing. When did you start playing in bands and things? Your first sort of
Well, I was
experience.
sort of shy. I mean, I played guitar at home,
Hmm.
um, and again, trying to play along with records. I didn't really have a instructor. I had one of those Mel Bay chord books that you open
Okay.
up and it shows, and some of them are impossible, even
Oh,
are impossible to play if you're a 14-year-old first learning a C chord, and then there's E flat major 13, and you're like,
impossible.
major 13? I don't have enough fingers to do
No, you
that.
don't. Definitely not. Yeah.
So there was that, and I did have a little band in my last year of high school called Osprey, which was
Okay.
two guitars and a drummer. We didn't know a bass player, and so that was
Okay.
that.
Right.
We would rehearse down in the basement. We only ever played out in public one time, which was a little bit too bad that it turned out the way it did. We were opening for a touring band that I've never been able to track down. I think they must have not existed for very long. But they were called Fidgety Feet,
No, I don't think
as
I've.
in I can't not dance,
Okay,
Fidgety Feet.
okay,
They were amazing. So
okay.
we came up and did our little, we did a couple of Neil Young songs and did our big triumph. Osprey's big triumph was doing Inagata Davida into Frankenstein by Edgar Winter, back into Inagata Davida. It was like a
That's
medley.
different. Okay.
It was a little bit different, and we had a good time. But so we did our bit, and then these guys came up and they completely blew us off. I mean, they were older. They were,
Yeah,
college kids or older, and we were 15-year-olds from, you know,
yeah.
from
Well,
rural New Hampshire, and they probably came from New York or so. I don't
yeah,
know.
they
All I
were.
knew is
Yeah.
that they were damn good, and when we felt rather dejected and left with our tail between our legs.
Well,
And
you
that
were the
was it.
country.
We never performed again.
Oh, okay. I love it. Yeah, well, you were the country bumpkins, really, weren't you? And they got the city slickers coming out with all their sort of sophistication.
Sure,
Um,
sure. And it didn't help that when I had been at that music camp, which I had such a great time at, it was called Marywood. It was a chamber music camp, and I was
okay.
there in trumpet, and I was really the worst player on the property. I
Okay.
would go to the furthest practice cabin way down in the woods and quietly play my parts while I was hearing someone on piano or violin,
Yeah.
one or two practice cabins over, just thundering away at Beethoven and, just killing it.
Oh,
And I'm like,
wow.
oh,
Oops.
shoot.
Oh dear. Yeah. Okay.
But I made some friends there, and
Like,
in fact my best friend to this day remains my best friend. I met at that camp, um, and I would go down on the bus to visit him in the greater Boston area, and he had many hip friends, and
mm,
uh, so I felt like I had my tentacles were a little bit involved in big city,
mm,
uh, I don't want to say hipness, but just something
yeah.
other than being in rural New Hampshire and
Yeah.
talking to people. And
Hmm.
and I frankly, I don't mean to sound, um, well, the word is not racist. That it's not. What's the word when you would have religious intolerance?
Well, that's a good question.
There must be a word for it. I can't
There
think of it right
probably
now.
is. Oh, come to
Anyway,
me in a minute.
basically what it was that I had met Jews for the first time, which is that most of
Okay.
the people
Okay.
at the music camp, and one that I later worked at for many years. I was the camp director of a chamber music camp called Apple Hill,
Okay.
and a lot of the people that were there just so happened to be Jewish.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
to me, it was a revelation talking to them because they were talking about writers of the day, Kurt Vonnegut, politics of the day, George McGovern, who ran for president and lost in
Hmm. Sure.
1972,
Sure.
singer-songwriters, Carole King, James Taylor.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
filled our minds, and then we were all in the same boat. We all were
Yeah.
very curious
Yeah.
and just in it was like
Fascinating.
it wasn't only intellectual. There was
Right.
also, a real heartfelt connection about music and about things that were of import to our little group of 15-year-olds at a music camp in the early
Right.
70s.
Right.
So, and anyway, so music was definitely in my life, not only
Sure.
playing in the local New Hampshire concert band, but I began not playing out. I didn't play outside the house, but I began writing one or two songs. And I
Right.
tried, of course, to play along all the time on my
Mhm.
guitar, which my mother was very good at, but she bought me a nice Martin acoustic guitar. And later on, for $50, my first electric guitar, which I still
Superb.
have.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Um,
Wonderful.
so anyway, I feel like you've asked a question and I haven't addressed it properly.
I think you've pretty well addressed it, Probyn. We'll I can't remember what the question was anyway, so that's that doesn't really matter. But I was going to. So, what about your first job then? What did you didn't consider music as a career? Obviously, you were thinking this is just something like a hobby and a. Did you? I mean, were you
Right.
direct? I mean, obviously, your dad was
So
into
yeah,
boxing.
right. This now there's a missing link in here, which is that when I got out of high school and into college,
Hmm.
I did begin playing at the coffee house, just as myself,
Okay.
as a solo artist.
Oh,
Some of my
okay.
songs, mostly Neil Young songs or other songs of the day, Seals and Crofts, uh,
Hmm.
James Taylor, that sort of thing. That was what
Yeah, great.
filled my coffee house set. And while
Okay.
I was at college, the punk revolution happened, which I embraced,
Oh,
and I had a
yeah.
radio show. And whatever I was
Okay.
supposed to be playing, I just stopped playing that, and I started playing punk nonstop, to
Did
the
you?
chagrin of I got a lot of phone calls. Hey, I used to like your radio show. What's going on? This is garbage. And I would say to them, this is the future of rock and roll. So just get used to it.
Oh, wow, isn't that interesting? Yeah, I know a few the punks of the day as well who got into doing punk and yeah, a radio guy in England, all sorts of people. Yanni was a punk, I think, at one point. Yanni
Oh,
from Madrid.
really?
Yeah, I think so.
That's
Yeah, she was.
hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, it's hilarious for sure. But
So I had a little
okay,
band that I formed called the Ballones. I think we played
okay,
out twice. We had three
okay.
rehearsals, two shows, and that was the end. We flew apart as all good punk bands should do.
Right, for sure. Oh my goodness, Sex Pistols and
So
everybody else. Goodness me, takes
so
you
so
back.
the college that I found myself at was one that had a conservatory attached to it. It was a place called Oberlin, which
Okay,
is in the middle of the country near Cleveland.
okay,
Um, and so I took as many classes as I could at the conservatory because I wanted to learn. I was very interested in music theory and,
okay.
um, you know, especially the French Impressionists, Ravel,
Yeah,
Debussy,
lovely. Yeah,
Fauré, people like that. I really
great
enjoyed that
for
kind
a
of
yeah.
music. So I was
Nice.
playing as much as I could, and I did not get into the orchestra, which I could have done. I mean, I continued
Mhm.
to play a little bit of French horn, but mainly when I was at the coffee house, I was just acoustic guitar myself.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess what happened was that my I used to always play along with records in my dorm room. I'd put the
Okay.
stereo on and
Yeah.
put my guitar amp on at a low volume so as not to bother the neighbors. And my roommate at the time secretly recorded me playing along with like Frank Zappa or
Okay.
something hard, something over my head that I had no right really trying to play. Um,
Oh, wow.
and he submitted this tape to two schools. One was called Berklee School of Music in
Hmm.
Boston, and the other was
Hmm.
called the Guitar Institute of Technology in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
And I suddenly got in the mail these two acceptance letters, and he had not told me what he had done.
All
But he
right.
saw, but he saw these. I said, "What is this?" He said, "Oh, I meant to tell you. I secretly recorded you, and it was a $10 registration
Superb.
fee. I
Oh,
know that
wow.
you Probyn, you don't know what you're doing after graduation, and I thought you should
Yeah.
go to a music school that is for rock." And I thought,
Wow.
huh, okay. All
Amazing.
right, you know what? I'll do that. I'm going to do that. So I did not accept Berkeley, partly because it was so close. It was, an hour or an hour and a half from where I grew up.
Okay.
And I kind of needed to get
Have a
away from the
change.
family and
Yeah.
get on my own two legs. So
Yeah.
I moved to Hollywood in 1980, and I went to this guitar school, which was only a year's worth of program.
Okay.
And at the conclusion of that, I went on some audition calls. The first one I went on was a Rolling Stone tribute band. And I don't even really like the Rolling Stones that much. I mean, not compared
I
to the
don't either.
Beatles. Like
I don't know
when
either.
I was a kid, it was like Beatles versus the Stones, and I was firmly in the Beatles camp. Um,
Definitely.
so
Yeah.
anyway, I remember that at this audition, they didn't even want to hear they didn't want to hear me play. I came in and they said, "Put this wig on," and I put on this Ron Wood sort of Stones wig, and they looked at me and they said, "You might work. Okay, now let's hear you play." So they rehearsed and I played guitar, and that was it. I didn't get it. Maybe because I wasn't that much into the Stones anyway.
Yeah, the
But
heart wasn't there.
I began helping. There was an organization called the Los Angeles Songwriters Showcase that I volunteered to work at, and they were
Okay.
forever getting little EPs and LPs sent in by bands
Yeah.
that were trying to get a record deal.
Sure.
So we would listen to them, all of us in the office, and the ones that
Excellent.
we'd had a little magazine that came out, and we'd give reviews, or
Okay.
maybe the people that were in charge would actually write the artist back and say, "Well, we like this song." Anyway, in the course of that, I heard a band that did a song that I liked. I liked it so much that at the guitar school, I worked up an arrangement of it and performed it and recorded it. And I sent it to this band, the Johnny Baltimore band, that had put out this song, Pictures from Sweden, which was about pornography. It was
Right, I was
about
going to say it's
getting
not
pictures.
really. I'm not sure I
Anyway,
know it.
it was a funny song, and the music
Okay.
was good. It
Okay.
was very new wave, and
Okay.
so and this band wrote back or called me back, and they said, "Hey, I'm that's amazing," and someone's already covering our song, and they
Right.
said, "We just lost our guitar player. Do you want to come down and audition?" And I said, "Sure," even though I didn't have a car, and I had to, borrow someone's car to get to the audition. And
Okay.
eventually I did get a car when I was in Los Angeles. But
Okay.
anyway, I was with that band for several years after that. We
Okay.
morphed into a surf band called The Wedge, which
Oh, yes.
we got a Grammy nomination in 1982. We lost, I think, to the Hill Street Blues theme in the instrumental
Really?
category.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
something. That's something, isn't it? Really?
That
But
was
you
something. And so we began playing at a time when surf music was experiencing a bit of a resurgence in
surgeons.
At
Hmm.
least in Los Angeles it was.
Okay.
So that was the early 80s now we're talking. And then I just, I got a job at a bookstore to pay the rent and I
Yeah.
began joining bands. I was usually in two and three bands at a time, hoping that one of them would get signed. And
Yeah.
this went on for like almost 20 years, and none of the bands I was in ever got truly signed.
Okay.
Eventually, I found myself playing with the Wondermints and a group called the
Yeah.
Negro Problem,
Yeah.
who were well known in at least in Los Angeles at that time. Uh,
Can we?
and
Okay.
we would have people come out to see us at the clubs, and you know the Wondermints did get a Japanese record deal and had these sort of one-offs on.
Yeah.
Uh, Trying to remember the labels. Smile was one of the labels, which of course later came down to. We were then later part of the getting Smile, Brian Wilson's Smile off the ground, but that's jumping way ahead.
Of course. Yeah.
Um,
So
so anyway,
Wonder.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it go on.
Sorry, no problem. I was just going to say you've obviously Wondermints, but who led you into the Wondermints?
Um,
That all that story is really, really great. It's all
well,
about.
I had a I was playing in a band called the Real Impossibles. I believe I was the bass player at that time.
Okay.
And the person that later succeeded me in that band said, you're always talking about the Beach Boys, bro, but I have a friend that I want to introduce you to." And he introduced me to this guy, Darian Sahanaja, who, if I remember right, the first meeting, he was wearing a Smile T-shirt I said to him, "Where did you get that shirt?" There it is.
Yeah.
That's the one. And I said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "I silk screened it myself. I have a copy of the art by Frank Holmes."
Yeah.
And so of course we started trading cassettes of all the little
Yeah.
snippets and trying to manufacture our own running order of what Smile would have been like had Brian not had his big breakdown.
Yeah.
And if no one knows what the original running order was. And I'm not even
Sure.
sure Brian had one particularly in mind.
Okay.
And as you know, many fans over the years have put together their own running order of Smile.
Mhm. Mhm. Those little
But
cassettes, the hissy, I remember getting them in the early 80s from the Beach Boys fan club in the UK. And I thought, what is this? Oh, Smile. And I remember going to a great hi-fi shop thinking, you're going to hear something now, guys. You've probably never heard this before, and this is going to blow your mind. So I put it on. It was so flipping hissy, it's like, but man, we were just like, oh, it was almost, some of it was almost in a distance. You thought, yeah, what is
yes,
this? It's so wonderful. And I remember, I think I forget when I was trying to find some of the Beach Boys stuff. I joined the fan club and I went through record stores and fairs and all of that. And you heard this about Smile and those little cassettes, though, they just, I thought, wow, what? It's never going to come out. And the guys we were exchanging these bits of music and cassettes galore, and it was a crazy time, but so never believed it would have all come out as it did. because we thought it was all
Right.
lost. And yeah,
Sure, sure. I even took an ad out in the newspaper, an ad that said,
yeah, I remember.
"Dear Capitol Records, please release Smile. This music needs to be heard by the general public."
Yeah,
Then, of course, nothing happened.
nothing
That was in
happened for
the
that. No,
80s, and